Are we live? We are live. Yes. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is Friday, August the 28th, and we are about to get started. Today, I've got a lot of really cool questions. Some of these questions, some of the questions people have been reaching out to me, I'm going to have to make specific videos about. But before I even do that, a lot of you guys, I went ahead and I said, hey, man, I was typing back to you. Most of it is this. I got a lot of stuff in my email inbox, actually, just in the past couple of days, and quite a few things on Instagram and through my Facebook page. So we're going to have a fun time. And so there's a few things we're going to cover that I already know about. And if you want to ask any questions, we can go for that too today. Let's see here. What do we got today? So first of all, it is a Friday, so I'm pretty happy about that. I am excited for it's actually going to be pretty moderately warm in the Midwest, not insanely hot. So that's always good for going outside and getting some sun. Highly recommend going out to get some sun. Everybody's talking about staying indoors and all this stuff. And I'm just saying, no, dude, you got to get out. You got to get some clean air, some fresh air in your system. And you got to get some vitamin D, and in the Midwest, I'm going to get to your questions, but as we're gathering, I'm going to show you. In the Midwest, we have this thing called the farmer's tan. You know what that is? It's where you get the tan here, and then you're all not tanned elsewhere. I don't know what you guys might call that elsewhere in the world, but we call it the farmer's tan here in the Midwest. So we're going to be talking about a few things. I had a question about, and I get this kind of question a lot, and it's kind of it always comes in a different way. It has to do with the oxygen advantage, right? So Patrick McEwen's oxygen advantage and the Wim Hof method. And so this is one of those things I remember early on in my breathworking career. Actually, I think I read the oxygen advantage the same year that I became a Wim Hof method instructor. So here I was, getting to know Wim and doing these crazy things with Wim Hof, doing an enormous amount of hyperventilation or what we would consider, what I would describe as superventilation. And then you read this book, The Oxygen Advantage, and it talks about, hey man, you shouldn't be over breathing. We should not over breathe. And it talks about the issues of over breathing and specifically the issues of breathing through your mouth versus your nose. And here I was, hoffing along going, breathing through my mouth. So, there was a certain degree of I'm not sure how these two things are going to go along. How do they fit together? So we're going to talk about that. I'm actually coming out with a book of my own. It'll be out September 29th. It's going to be physical copy on Amazon. This is a crazy process getting published, guys. So it's a lot of work. I've put in a lot of time, and I'm just basically writing the book that whenever I started all this stuff, I wish that I had this book. That's whenever I write something, I try to just say, well, what do I wish I would have had when I started? And that's what it is. It's called A Practical Guide to Breathwork, and it's going to be on Amazon in hard copy, ebook. I'm even going to be doing a Audible. So for those of you who want to read, who don't want to read, you want to do an Audible, I'm going to do an Audible. That will come much later than September 29th. So if you're down for it, I take my money. Thank you, Don. And good afternoon to you guys. It should be available on all the Amazons. So it should be available internationally and just around the globe. And then also the ebook version, I'll be also selling a copy on my website, which I know if you go to my website now to buy my ebook, A Practical Guide to Cold Training, that goes almost everywhere. I think there's a few people who have said, hey man, I can't seem to buy this. And I always try to figure out some way to be able to get it to you, but I haven't really had any problem selling it off of my website as a direct things. So yes, so I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. Basically, I cover just about, I just cover a ton of stuff. So so it's coming out. I'm super excited. But hey, let me get back to the question. So the question is always around this issue of oxygen advantage and Wim Hof method. So there's this. There's what looks like a conflict, and early on, there was a little bit of criticism that was thrown Wim Hof's way from Patrick McEwen. He was like, he saw, the Hoffers just sitting there breathing really heavy, and he's like, no, that's not a good idea. And the reality is that what these are, and this is something I cover in my book, it's all breath work. So we can use the breath to do a lot of things. We are constantly using the breath to do a lot of things. Right now, as you are sitting there, as you are hearing my voice, as I am speaking, I am using the breath in a certain way to accomplish certain things. And as a public speaker, as a person that I'm a professor, I teach, and I'm always talking in front of people, it is actually very common for people that are public speakers, or hey man, if you're like me and you're also a real talker, I'm the guy that comes to the party and it's like, I'm not going to stop talking until I leave, and I may be talking to people as I leave too. I'm like, hey, okay. Anyway, people who talk a lot and people who do a lot of public speaking actually are oftentimes the worst when it comes to over breathing and when it comes to mouth breathing. So, just think about that. Think about how much breath I'm using right now, and I'm modulating it so much. And oftentimes you're wanting to speak really quickly, so you'll breathe in through the mouth as opposed to the nose. So let's talk a little bit about the oxygen advantage and Wim Hof method specifically. So they're both right. I'm just going to come out with it. It's not like there's a zero sum game when it comes to breath work. Everything is breath work. As long as you are breathing, you are doing some kind of breath work. And now what I mean by that is this. You may, like for instance, for those of you guys who go to the gym, right? You go to the gym, you understand that there are certain movement patterns that a person can get into that will lead to injury. So, and over time, we'll see that. And of course, if you don't go to the gym, you probably have one of these things, right? And we understand that after a certain amount of time, we continue to look at screens, we continue to hunch over, and we will we'll have these movement patterns that cause dysfunction. So right now, as you're breathing, it's possible that you're either leading to dysfunction or you're leading to better function. Okay, so posture is a big thing when it comes into play for breathing. Your breath wave, all kinds of things that come into play. So when it comes to Wim Hof method and oxygen advantage, we have two things that both do great things. The Wim Hof method is a superventilation breathing technique, meaning that we will superventilate. We'll be breathing faster than what we have to, and we have a goal in mind for it. So we're going to exhale more carbon dioxide than we would naturally need to. Okay, so we're shedding a bunch of carbon dioxide, and we're creating an imbalance of blood gases on purpose. So we're doing that on purpose, and that's the purpose. That's why we're doing that superventilation, and that is to facilitate a long breath hold. Right now, the long breath hold, what that does, right? There's a lot of different things that it'll do, but one of the things that it does is it's been shown recently that it can increase our oxygen carrying capacity by improving or increasing our red blood cell count. So we couldn't hold our breath that long, and we couldn't get the oxygen levels that low in our blood if we didn't do the superventilation, if we didn't actually do that, the 30 to 40 breaths. We couldn't actually do that unless we did these things together. So when you do Wim Hof method breath work, you've got maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe if it's a rough day, maybe it's 20 minutes to 30 minutes, right? Hey, in the world we're living in now, you got to give yourself as much medicine as you need. But the point is, you've got a certain amount of time where you're doing superventilation. Outside of that, you should be breathing like they talk about in Oxygen Advantage. We should not be over breathing all the time. So whenever I first started doing Wim Hof method, that was the first breathing technique I ever learned. It was the first real introduction to me. I always call it the gateway drug for breath work. And so I thought, well, the more I hyperventilate, the better. I'm going to oxygenate my cells. I'm going to, do all these good things. And of course, I'm an American. So in America, we just love to say, if a little is good, a lot must be better. So I did a lot of Wim Hof method breathing all throughout the day. Now, did this hurt me? Well, in a way it did, because my diaphragm got really sore and I realized that I needed to tone it down a little bit. But it's not a good thing. If you walked around all the time superventilating, right? Breathing real hard all the time, that's not a good thing, okay? And if you read the Oxygen Advantage, it talks about why that is. The average person breathes too hard for their needs. And by doing that, they reduce their tolerance to carbon dioxide. So whenever I coach maybe an athlete, or when I coach anybody that is suffering from high amounts of anxiety, or athletes, or both. Hey, athletes can have anxiety too. One of the things we work on is their CO2 tolerance. And so when it comes to CO2 tolerance, we need to start to learn to feel that urge to breathe. And that's CO2 is what that is. So when you feel the urge to breathe, as if you were just maybe to hold your breath for a second, okay, what's happening right here is cellular, what is it? Your mitochondria are producing ATP. Cellular respiration is the thing I was thinking of. And one of the things that happens is your CO2 levels are going to rise in your blood. And your chemoreceptors realize that, and they say, okay, we need to get rid of this excess CO2. And so whenever we do that, we exhale it. Now, athletes, and really anybody, if you're just winded, even at the top of the stairs or something like that, what you're experiencing is high levels of carbon dioxide, and not even necessarily high levels. For some of us, we just have such a low tolerance to carbon dioxide that we can't help but pant all the time. And so there's been a lot of research, like for instance, with early research with carbon dioxide and its role was, Bohr and Buteyko. And then what Patrick McEwen did in his book, and what he does, like if you were to, some of my friends, they've trained with Patrick McEwen, and basically what his main focus is getting a better handle on your tolerance of CO2. And the higher your tolerance gets, the longer it will be before you're winded, because you can tolerate higher levels. If you have a low tolerance, man, you're just huffing and puffing, just sitting there. So when it comes to the question that I was asked, as far as the Oxygen Advantage, let's see, what is the exact question? But basically, it was with the Oxygen Advantage versus Wim Hof method. They are not versus. They're just two different things that you can use. And personally, whenever I train people, I look at using superventilation for certain purposes, and I look at using some of the techniques. Some of the techniques I'll use, you can find in the Oxygen Advantage. There's other techniques I've learned from other teachers and some of the things I've developed on my own to improve a person's CO2 tolerance. So it's not a matter of if one is better than the other. They're both awesome. And they're both two parts of a huge landscape that is the growing landscape of breath work. So it's an exciting time. Really, it's an exciting time because we're seeing breath work kind of take off. For the longest time, breath work and I talk about this in my book, but for the longest time, breath work was something that was either only practiced, like for instance, if you're a yogi, and it was not really that prominent in the West to learn all the different forms of pranayama. Or breath work was these things that were oftentimes looked down upon. They were sort of in the fringes and things like that. But now it's starting to come out, hey, this is real. There's science to back it, and it's something that you can use practically, and you can apply it to your life. So let's see. Is there any question? Let's take a quick look. Wim's breathing always is belly, chest, head. This is Moose Man's. Ooh, Moose Man's. Wim's breathing always is belly, chest, head. I noticed that some of your breathing sessions are different, like belly only. Could you discuss this? Okay, so yeah, so Wim's method, belly, chest, head, or you could also look at it. There's different ways you can approach it. We're trying with Wim Hof method. You're trying to get a very full lung. You're really trying to maximize the inhales and maximize that gas exchange in the blood. Now with and Moose Mans, if you're still there with me, are you on my Patreon club? Because if you're my Patreon club, yeah, there's a lot of different things I'll take you through. And so, yeah, so there are some breathing techniques that are just going to be just abdominal, like you're just trying to focus specifically on diaphragmatic breathing. Many exercises are like that. And especially depending on what you're trying to get out of the situation. Are you trying to activate? Are you trying to relax? Is this before a workout? Is it after a workout? Is this during a workout? What parts of my physiology should I use to maximize each breath? So, okay, not on Patreon yet, hoping to join in September. I've got a big library now. It's growing. I've been doing this Patreon club since March. And when you join, you get access to the full library. Every month, I add at least 2 or 3 new breathing sessions. So they're between like 10 minutes. Some of them are as long as 45 minutes of different kinds of breathing. And what I do, and this is what I do in person. I've done it for health professionals, and I teach it at the university. Got a lot of cool things coming up where I'm going to be teaching it to hopefully some military people and athletes and whatnot. But basically what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to put together a few breathing techniques, and it's going to produce this certain effect for you. So a lot of good stuff here. Hey, Rob, good to see you. Rob is and if you're cool, hopefully whenever this COVID thing lifts, you can come out to Mandala Springs with me and Rob, and we'll take you through some really beautiful. Mandala Springs is just a beautiful place. It is natural running water and just gorgeous area. And Rob is a chocolatier. He does craft chocolate, and so we do some workshops out there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you, buddy. We should have done at least 2 or 3 by now since the last time I was there, but the world's upside down. So let's see here. All right, so let's see, where are we here? Few things I wanted to talk about first. I actually got some communications. I promised I would respond on this. So we have, let's see. So Shane, all right, my bro Shane, he got a hold of me via Instagram, and this is what he wrote. He says, I have a question about enthusiasm. So enthusiasm, right? Okay, so I'm glad we're talking about this. Mine seems so low lately, especially in front of strangers. I work in dangerous and violent environments, and I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it. Well, your environment is always going to affect you some. Sure, absolutely. Other than forcing myself to be enthusiastic and focusing on that, I'm not sure how else I can be enthusiastic and more open and expressive other than high doses of caffeine, which I avoid now. And I applaud you for avoiding the high doses of caffeine. I'm going to just admit this. I I like caffeine too much. It's like Mark Twain once said, I don't smoke. I like it too much. Of course, he said a lot of things about smoking, right? He said, smoking is the easiest thing to quit. I've done it like a million times. So that's similar. That's similar to how it's been with me and caffeine. Right now, I haven't had any caffeine for maybe a week or two. I like to try to just go zero caffeine as much as I can. I mean, you sleep better. The weird thing is, if for those of you who like do a lot of gym stuff, there's almost this weird feeling like you have to do caffeine before you go to the gym. And actually, caffeine affects your breathing a lot. And so it's going to affect, it generally makes you over breathe. So it can make a workout awesome, but it can also make some things suck too. So let's talk about this, Shane. So enthusiasm. And then I texted him back a little bit. I said, hey man, I'll talk about this today at 2 on our YouTube live. He says, I feel almost robotic lately. I also feel like the times where we are in now have something to do with it. And he said, I appreciate you, man. Hey, I appreciate you too, Shane. And let's talk about this for a minute. First of all, when it comes to enthusiasm, I really make an effort to try to be enthusiastic. Now, there's all sorts of schools out there and all sorts of different kinds of advice that people get from, I guess, the health and wellness industry, or the influencers or whatever. And there's a few things that sometimes I'll agree with what I hear a lot. Sometimes I completely disagree. One of the things I think, Shane, and if you're suffering from just a lack of enthusiasm and lethargy, let me tell you this, you're not alone, okay? And I would guarantee you that oftentimes social media is terrible about this. And even, my YouTube channel, I've had people reach out and they ask me, hey, why is it that you always appear to be so calm and relaxed and in charge of your emotions and things like that? And the thing is, yeah, I'm not videotaping myself and putting myself out there whenever I'm feeling terrible and frazzled and afraid and things like that, right? So you're going to see a lot of these influencers and they're always in a good mood and they're always, everything is going great, but it's okay. You have my permission to occasionally say, hey, you know what? Things are crazy right now. Or, hey, I'm feeling this way. It's okay to authorize that. One of the schools of philosophy that I love is Stoicism. And I'm sure a lot of you guys love Stoicism. It's something that I think is really important, especially for young people to learn, because life gets really frustrating and we don't always get to control the situations that we're in, especially right now. Here's the crazy thing, guys. So I live in the Midwest, and in the United States, of course, we've had, this COVID thing, and it didn't hit the Midwest until just now in major numbers. So only right now are we seeming to get, it seems like there's big numbers. And so there's all kinds of restrictions and things like that. But when it comes down to feeling enthusiastic, there's a few things. When it comes to the philosophy of Stoicism, I think it's very helpful. I think that we can't necessarily control our environment, but we can try to control our emotional response and how we look at things. The other thing is, I think it's also important to realize we're not robots, that we have emotions. I think it's okay to authorize those emotions and occasionally just say, man, I'm feeling down today and I'm feeling low energy. Actually during the lockdowns that occurred, I had a day that I just woke up and I was just not having it. And, fortunately I'm married to a woman that just won't let me feel sorry for myself. So she kind of let me have it, did a lot of this. And it was true. I was throwing a pity party for myself. But yeah, it's sometimes very difficult to be enthusiastic, and it's okay to recognize that. My advice to you, first of all, is to recognize the fact that if you're working in a dangerous, violent environment, that's coming into play, right? And I don't know what you're doing, my friend, but hopefully that won't always be the case. I hope you're not going to always be in a dangerous and violent environment. Hopefully it's not all the time, but if it is, there's obviously certain precautions, safety things that I would encourage you to take. The one thing that has always helped me when it comes to enthusiasm, first of all, taking good care of yourself, right? You got to sleep enough, drink enough water, exercise, I think it's okay to go exercise and kind of use the violence that's been built up in my body, really try to work it out, really try to exercise the demons, right? Really try to get it out in those kinds of cases, those times of frustrations. I also think that breath work is great, obviously. Cold exposure, Wim Hof method style breathing, superventilation of a lot of kinds. There's also the importance of an interrupter. So for some people, just starting breath work, like doing a superventilation style breath work, like Wim Hof method, or taking an ice bath, that is an interrupter. That's something that changes the whole world that you were in. It's such a different thing. There's also, but if you've been doing that for a while, okay, maybe you need something else. And of course, sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you have to authorize that it's not like you have to just sit here and suffer all the time. Sometimes you do need a break. One thing that I've done, and I've done this since I was a kid, I found out that if you smile, I didn't realize this was polyvagal theory, but at the time I found out that if you make a focused effort to smile, you're sending signals to yourself that you are happy. Jesse M, I'm going to talk about more interrupters in just a second. So stay tuned. But real quick, I would recommend doing those little things. And it's sort of biohacking. So it's sort of just biohacking, really. So I know that if I smile, if I make a concerted effort to send outward signals of happiness, not for other people, I'm not doing it to please other people. I'm doing it because I know that my brain is set up to observe these signals. So if I'm smiling at a person, if I envision people that I love smiling back at me, or even people that I don't love, even maybe just my boss or something like that smiling back at me, these are all things that can improve our mood and improve the way we feel psychologically. And even there's been some studies to show that you get physiological changes simply from doing this. So these little things add up. And so caffeine actually is to your detriment. It's strange, but even though you get really amped up and I will say caffeine at times is there's nothing wrong with it. But if you can learn to get off of caffeine, you're going to find that your emotional state is far more regulated. You're not going to be stuck in that fight or flight mode quite so much. And even though we've come to like the caffeine feeling, that adrenaline rush of being caffeinated, really what it is, it puts us in a state of fight or flight. So psychologically, it puts us in a state where we do not feel safe. And, that's not a great place to be if you're trying to feel enthusiastic and you're trying to feel happy. Now, when it comes to interrupters, okay, so an interrupter can be just about anything. For instance, and sometimes it's super just you, right? So for me, it can be something completely different. Like, so normally I travel around and I do workshops everywhere. Like that's my thing. And so I hadn't been able to do that for a long time. My wife and I, normally we try to go to visit her family that they live in Florida once a year, which is a nice getaway. These are little interrupters. So vacations are often interrupters, but it just seems like, just not the best environment for that right now. So, and I don't understand what led my wife to suggest this, but she's like, hey, maybe we should go camping this weekend. Now, my wife won't even walk barefoot in the grass. So here I am. I've been walking barefoot everywhere I go. As I hate wearing shoes. If I can avoid wearing shoes, I do. But she won't even wear shoes. I mean, she won't even go barefoot in the grass, just out in our lawn. And it's funny, if there's a wasp or a bee that flies by, I mean, it is the end of the world. So whenever she said camping, I'm like, okay. And I hadn't been camping since I was probably in undergrad college. So probably we're talking maybe over a decade where I've not been camping. So we get a tent, we take the dog, we take our 5-year-old, we go to a campground. It's hot. It's not that comfortable. We're rookies, so we're learning, and but for that weekend, we really didn't get very good cell phone signals. And it was just one of those weekends where I was in such a different state of mind that it interrupted the mundane banality that I had been in. And same with her. We came back, everybody's happier, even our dog. Our dog believes now that, he's like, yeah, guys, we've bonded in nature. But basically that was an interrupter for us. It doesn't have to be, an interrupter doesn't have to be some kind of a cosmic experience. It just needs, we as human beings, we need to relieve ourselves and to have a diversion now and then. I mean, it can be going parachuting. It can be going, maybe it's, maybe you haven't had you haven't had drinks with a friend in a long time. Okay. Maybe you need to have a few extra drinks. It's the thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to step outside of my regular robot routine for just one day or one night or one weekend and shake it up a little bit. So when it comes to discomfort, sometimes that's a great interrupter. Of course, ice baths are not generally considered comfortable. Heat therapy is not generally considered comfortable. In our camping trip, dude, we were sleeping on the ground, and you don't sleep that great. There's other people in the campground. I was constantly, just, it was not comfortable. It was hot, but we approached it with this, like, we're going to do this. We're going to have fun with this. I did make an effort to do some pretty cool cooking over the fire. So that was kind of cool. So, pushing yourself outside of your regular zone, even if it's outside of your comfort zone, is a great idea for an interrupter. So, hey, anyway, Shane, I really hope that you're staying safe. First and foremost, when anybody tells me they're working in dangerous and violent environments, I definitely, I'm thinking of you there. So hopefully this helps. And hey, if not, you know how to get a hold of me. We'll talk. I've got another, let's see, we got, this one is Wim Hof method. And I think I see a few more questions about Wim Hof method here. So let's get into it. So, okay. So this one is talking about the push-ups. So the push-ups with Wim Hof method. If you're not familiar with this, especially in the original course, I think he also does it on the newer course. You got to remember, I learned my first Wim Hof method stuff from the original course. And even though I've gone through the fundamentals course, I just went through it. I was already an instructor whenever that came out. So I went through just to see what was in there, but I forget a little bit of that. And so let's take a look here. So he says, I always do 40 to 50 push-ups after 4 to 5 rounds of Wim Hof method breathing. That's pretty awesome. During the last retention. So he does it during his retention. And he says he does this because it kicks me into a really relaxed, meditative, trancy, and trippy state. Any reason not to do it this way? No, man, this is great. This is Sebastian who's writing this. So he says, hey, man, I like doing this 40 to 50 push-ups during the retention in my last round of Wim Hof method breathing. Go for it, man. In fact, I've always found that I get really this incredible, I always call it the buffet of happy chemicals whenever I do those push-ups during the retention in the last round of my Wim Hof method breathing. These days, I haven't done the push-ups in a while, but I remember there's been some times when people they go crazy. Just how just you see the lights that Wim always talks about, the kind of the colors. I love it. So hello, Sebastian from Germany. So thank you so much for writing in. And then he also asked the question. Now I did make a video about this and I uploaded it this week, but I'll just cover it briefly here. He asked the question, is there a reason during Wim Hof method breathing that we would want to limit the recovery breath to just 10 to 15 seconds? And again, I made a video about this, but the biggest reason why we do that is because when we're holding our breath, regardless of if it's full lung or empty lung, there's always a gas exchange that's happening, and we're trying with each round to increase that imbalance, and because the body's going to naturally try to come back to homeostasis. So we're trying to constantly increase that imbalance so that we can increase those retentions and hopefully increase the amount of relaxation that we get as we continue with the Wim Hof method style breathing. So, hey, thanks for that email, Sebastian. Let's take a quick look at some of the questions maybe up here. Okay, let's see. I once read that Wim Hof is for 1 hour per day and oxygen advantage is for the other 23. That's a great point to make, Andrew. That's exactly right. And even then, I mean, you're normally not even doing Wim Hof method for an hour. Let's see here. So here's a question. Oh, yeah, here's a good question from Gisela. And hey, I'm just going to really, I apologize for mispronouncing names. I'm a professor. And so every year I have like 100 and some students that I have to look in the face, and I have on my sheet what their names are. And I always mispronounce. And fortunately, students have a pretty good sense of humor. One time I had this girl, her last name was Bonner, Bonner. Guess what I said? Yeah, I said Boner. I said, so-and-so Boner. And then I turned red and I was embarrassed. And she fortunately forgave me for mispronouncing her name in such a way. But the question is, should we be doing the Wim Hof method breath work through the nose the whole time, mouth breathing the whole time, combination of both? Well, I always love Wim. I mean, every time he talks about this, he's like, breathe through your nose hole, your mouth hole, your butthole, and so he he really, his whole, when it comes to Wim Hof, he doesn't really care, right? So his main goal, and really the main goal of Wim Hof method breath work, is to create that imbalance of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood. And really, it doesn't make a huge difference to how you do that. However, okay, as a breath worker, as a person who coaches people on breathing, I'm going to tell you this. When I practice it, I generally stay nasal on the inhale and I do mouth on the exhale. Now, I've not always done it that way. Most of my life doing Wim Hof method, I've done mouth 100%. But the more I've read, the more I've researched, the more I've trained people, the more I've done nasal only, the more I've experimented, the more I realize that you're constantly training yourself. So if you're breathing through your nose, here's the cool thing about breathing through your nose. Your nose is going to provide some resistance. And that's the reason why we normally breathe through our mouths whenever we get winded and things like that, because there's no resistance. I mean, it's just a tunnel full of air in and out. Awesome. I'm not saying that you should never do that. I'm just saying that when we use the nose, that resistance actually activates our diaphragm. So when you're taking those 30 to 40 breaths, or how many ever breaths you take as you do your Wim Hof method breathing, what that means is you're practicing proper breathing. You're actually improving your natural breath wave because you're doing nasal breathing. So I always recommend, if you can, to do it that way. But I'll tell you this, there's going to be some times whenever you just have a stuffed up nose, and it is what it is. And I'm not going to say, like, for instance, you can talk to a lot of different breath workers, and they're going to say, just do it through your mouth. And I'm going to say, it's totally fine to do it through your mouth. But for me, I do it through the nose. One thing I might suggest for you just to try is do your first round, the very first round, through your nose. And at least if you do it that way, you have primed your diaphragm. And so even if you switch over to the mouth in all the rest of your session, then at least you've primed your diaphragm to work more effectively, and you're less likely to, you're more likely to improve your breath wave just in general. Well, I'll put it that way. All right, let's see here. And let's see, where I live Andrew says, where I live, winter will be largely cold, wet, windy, rather than crystal clear 0 temps. Any recommendations regarding the cold exposure in the rain? Oh, yeah, okay, so let's talk about this. And then let's see how long we got. We'll do a few more minutes. So when it comes to rain, cold rain. So, hey, I just call that thanks for the cold shower, Mother Nature. Now, the difference between taking a cold shower in the wintertime indoors and going outside in the rain outdoors is that the ambient temperature of the air is going to be far lower than if you go outside than if you were to take a cold shower indoors. So the cold shower indoors, you're still going to be approximately room temperature, right? Because the heater's on, the ambient air temperature is going to stay the same. Now, if you go outside, you're probably going to be down much colder, just even if you just walked outside and it wasn't raining, right? But now it's raining. So you get that additional challenge. Now, this is something that that you need to be aware of. There's a few things, and I cover this. I'm coming out with the second edition of my ebook, A Practical Guide to Cold Training. I'm considering turning it into a paperback, but I'm telling you what, guys, this is so expensive. It's difficult to do the paperback stuff. But if you bought the first version, you're going to get the second version, the second edition, for free. Okay, so even if you just buy it today, later on this month, whenever I release the second edition, I just give you a free version of the second edition. Well, the thing you need to worry about, not necessarily worry about, but be aware of, is wind. So whenever you're in the rain or when you're outdoors in the cold and you're wet, wind chill can creep up on you really quickly. And so while the air temperature might be relatively cool, maybe it's above freezing, but just barely, or maybe it's just kind of cold outside. Well, that wind, when that wind hits you and you're wet, your skin temperature suddenly it could go below freezing, and you can get frostbite. You can suffer after-drop a little easier. So just be aware of those things whenever you're going outside in the rain, whenever it's cold. Now, the nice thing is, whenever you're doing this, you're also getting, it's everywhere, so you don't have to worry about just that little stream of water. Where am I going to get that? But on the other hand, it's going to be just more intense. So enjoy that, Andrew. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Yes, it doesn't look as cool as, snow makes for a great Instagram picture, but the rain can be a really great, it can be a really great training tool. So, all right, let's see here. So Paul, I'm gonna see what we have to say. I'm new to the method. I find that holding my breath after the breath with empty lungs helps me into a deeper meditation. Why is holding after the out breath not part of the Wim Hof method? Okay, so Paul, I tell you what, we've talked about it a little bit already. I'm not going to talk about it again, but real quick, take a look at my most recent upload. Okay, so I made a video specifically on this, and I explain it 100%. Thanks for the question, Paul. Let's see here. Don't forget my question from Instagram, Jesse. Okay, so Jason Morgan. All right. What's the best breathing exercise? Ah, yes. Okay. Hey, thank you. Thank you for showing up today, Jason. And thank you for reminding me. God knows I need reminders. So, okay. So here's the question. What's the best breathing exercise to help recovery from intense exercise, weight training, etc.? To help muscles recover from the next session? Great question. So there's a few things to think about here, but I'm just going to assume you're on your Instagram, which I read, you were talking about intense exercise like HIIT. You're talking about weight training, building muscle, stuff that I'm all into, man. I love this stuff. So here's the thing: after you work out, the very best breathing technique to do is basically what we're trying to do is switch over to the rest and digest state. Okay, so because what we try to do when you work out, it's awesome that you're in a fight or flight state. You get your adrenaline, blood goes to your muscles so that you can use those muscles. You actually have cortisol coursing through your veins, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's prolonged, it is a bad thing. Cortisol, especially for us guys, it's basically what we can. A simplified way to look at cortisol is that it's kind of like the testosterone killer, especially in whenever it's consistent, right? So, and if you take test boosters, just a quick aside, but we're going to talk about why this applies. Test boosters, almost all the test boosters out there are going to be something that keeps you from getting. Now, there's a lot of different kinds, but there's a lot of these test boosters, like the herbal test boosters. A lot of them nowadays are simply things that help you relax, or they keep you from getting into that heightened state of arousal because of this. Because if you're in a heightened state of arousal for a long period of time, your testosterone declines. So after you work out, I actually have a video on this, and I published an article in Testosterone Nation, of all places, about this. So if you go to testosteronenation.com, you can read my article about it, and there's a video where I actually guide you through this exercise, but I'm going to describe it for you right now. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to put ourselves from this aroused state, the stress state, we're trying to bring ourselves down to as close to I wouldn't say sleeping state, but as relaxed of a state as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to use nasal breathing on the inhale, and we're going to exhale through the mouth, and we're going to only breathe down to the belly. So this is not going to be a really active breathing technique. And what I want you to do, and of course, this is the thing that's going to earn you recognition in your gym. As soon as you're done, you put down the last weight, right? And I'm talking before, if you do protein afterwards, before any of that happens. But after your workout, maybe you've done cardio, HIIT, whatever. When you say, hey, I'm done with my workout, find a nice quiet spot in the gym and lie down. Okay, so lie down on your back and take a look at the article on Testosterone Nation, or you can take a look at the video I have just look at my videos. But what I want you to do is prop your legs up so that your knees are at a 90-degree angle. So your hips are at a 90-degree angle, knees are at a 90-degree angle. So you might find a chair or something like that to prop yourself up on. And you're going to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, only down to the belly. And you're going to inhale for 4 counts. So 4 seconds. And then you're going to exhale for 8 seconds. And you're going to repeat that for about 5 minutes. Okay. Maybe listen to some relaxing music. Hey, if you're like me, I'm listening to like metal and stuff when I'm lifting, right? Switch that off. Go to listen to, I don't know, I'm not saying go to Kenny G or something like that, but listen to something that's a little bit more relaxing. Maybe something that helps you count time and say in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just repeat that. Repeat it for about 5 minutes and try not to caffeinate the rest of the day. And I know that it's not always possible, maybe, but it is possible, but it's not always preferable. But the idea is that once you get yourself out of that fight or flight state, you want the rest of the day to be in a rest and digest state. You want to be able to digest all the nutrition. You want to be able to utilize it. You want your heart rate, your adrenaline, all these things to be nice and low so that all the hard work you put in the gym, you can benefit from it and recover the rest of the day. So if you worked out for 2 hours, awesome. Ideally, you'll get 22 hours of rest and digest before your next workout. All right. So one last question, then I've got to bounce. I have a very important reminder. I don't know if you can see that, but at 3 o'clock today, I've got to take my ice bath. So I've got a date with an ice bath coming up. Okay. Let's see here. Hey, you're welcome, Jason. Let's see. Okay, sometimes I feel like I'm passing out while breathing. Am I doing something wrong? Simon says. So if you're just sitting there and you're about to pass out in regular breathing, then yeah, see a doctor. I'm assuming you're saying Wim Hof method. So if you're doing Wim Hof method style breath, or if you're doing any breathing technique and you're about to pass out, that can mean that you're doing it wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it wrong. It depends on the technique. Typically, if it's Wim Hof method, then it's going to be very possible that you do pass out. It's not ideal and it's not what we're shooting for, but it can happen. And that's why we always practice superventilation in a seated or lying down position. We never do it while driving. We never do it in water because it is possible that you might pass out. Now, seasoned practitioners generally don't have this problem because you get to know yourself. There's a thing we call introception, and you'll learn to get to know yourself. But early on, it's often I'll see people pass out at workshops or when I do trainings. Anytime we do superventilation, there's always a possibility for that. So just always be safe. Anyway, guys, I want to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank my Patreon members for keeping me going. I am not able to do my workshops right now, so it is really nice. And I do really appreciate you guys for being with me and sticking with me. If you haven't joined the Patreon club, I really would invite you to do so. We've got breathing techniques that are basically I guide you through. I've got pretty awesome music. If Rob's still on here, he might have gone about his day, but Rob Linfesti does a lot of my music for me. So it's really awesome original music. And I guide you through various breathing techniques, different sessions for different effects. I'm about to begin on the September sessions soon. So those will be out very soon. But as soon as you join, you get access to the entire catalog. And it's super cheap to do it. So head over to Patreon and look for Midwestern Method. Again, I'm coming out with my book at the end of September. So please keep an eye out for that. Hold back a little bit of extra funds maybe to get that Breathwork book. It is a practical guide. I really get straight to the point. I try to get really straight to the point, and I've written it in a way that you can get on day one. You can start your practice of different various versions of breath work while you're reading the first half, which is about how our body works with the outside world, what top-down regulation is, what bottom-up regulation is, what our autonomic nervous system is all about, all of these things. And so I've written it in a way that it's like 2 books in one. So it's kind of cool. At least I think it is. My mother thinks it is. But anyway, guys, I really want to thank you for being here with me. I'm going to be doing these more often. I'm going to be doing some interviews coming up, and I've got some cool things to share in the future. So guys, thanks so much again for being here. And if you haven't already done so, please like this video, share it, and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another. Guys, have a great weekend.